Good morning, students and friends. Welcome you all today. So today we are going to discuss impairment of asset standard. So in the last class, we have covered few concepts of impairment of assets. Today I will be completing this standard, the second part. So friends, last class, in the last class, when I'm talking about Tuesday class, I was not available due to my health, but today I'm keeping well and I would be able to complete this standard today itself. So I can see a lot of students have joined. So thank you, Anu. I am good now, and that is why I'm taking a session. Yeah, thank you so much. So students, we started this standard on I believe 19th. We started on 20th. We started the standard on 20th, and we discussed few concepts like what is depreciation and what is impairment, right? How impairment is different from depreciation. That we discussed that impairment is like one-off activity which is event-based, and this is like a one-time hit in the P&L. Correct. Then we talked about some agenda, objective. The objective of this standard is that the assets in the balance sheet should not be carried at more than their recoverable value. Means whatever assets is reflecting in your balance sheet, whatever value is reflecting in your balance sheet, the values are not more than the market values. The values are not more than the recoverable values. Okay, recoverable value. And we also discussed the formula of recoverable value. A recoverable value is higher of fair value less cost to sell and value in use. Okay, so students, that day we talked about that on few assets, Ind AS 36 is not applicable. Why? This Ind AS 36 is applicable on all the assets except few assets. For example, inventory. While there is an impairment in inventory also, but this inventory impairment is covered by Ind AS 2, not Ind AS 36. For example, impairment of deferred tax asset. I mean to say when you have to reduce your deferred tax asset. Again, on the deferred tax asset, the impairment is covered by Ind AS 12, not Ind AS 36. Okay. So likewise, if I talk about financial instrument, there is an impairment on financial instrument as well. But that impairment is covered by Ind AS 109, okay, not Ind AS 36. So if a specific standard covers the impairment on a specific asset, then the impairment has to be measured, recognized, presented, disclosed as per that particular standard. Otherwise, Ind AS 36 is a residual standard. Okay. Talking about impairment loss is the amount by which carrying amount of an asset or cash generating unit exceeds its recoverable amount. So friends, in this standard, there are two concepts. One, this talks about individual asset and it talks about group of asset. When it is individual asset, it is an individual asset. But when it is group of asset, the name is cash generating unit, right? So you have to see, while checking the impairment loss, you have to see that the carrying value of an asset or the carrying value of the group of an asset, okay, should not exceeds the recoverable amount. If it exceeds the recoverable amount, in that case, you have to recognize the impairment loss. So now, since now we are well versed with the concept that impairment loss is equal to carrying value minus recoverable value. Carrying amount minus recoverable amount is equal to impairment loss. Okay. And recoverable amount is higher of fair value less cost to sell and value in use, right? Friends, then we discussed that, this impairment testing is not a simple exercise. This impairment testing is a detailed exercise which needs to engage a lot of valuers also, which also require a lot of valuations. Why? Because number one, you have to measure fair value less cost to sell. Second, you have to measure value in use. Okay. So that is why standard says that first of all, you need to identify whether the asset requires impairment. You need to identify the asset which may be impaired, right? Sir, how can we identify that asset which may be impaired? So standard says that at the end of every reporting period, you need to check, is there any indication whether the asset may be impaired? If indication is there, if indication exists, then you need to estimate the recoverable amount. You need to compute fair value less cost to sell and value in use. Sir, which indicator? So indicator are internal indicator and external indicator. Okay. Internal indicator, for example, you have seen that your asset is lying idle. Your asset got damaged, right? Your asset efficiency is going down. Okay. Or your company has announced restructuring. So these are kind of a internal indicator which says that probably the future efficiency of the asset is getting down. What is external indicator? External indicator is like significant decline in market value, changes in technological, market, economic, and legal environment, changes in interest rate, low market capitalization. Okay. These are the external indicator. For example, Vodafone Idea. So Vodafone Idea market capitalization is going down. Okay. So of course, their auditor always says that at every reporting date, you need to compute the impairment. You need to check the impairment. Okay. Then we discuss there are three assets which does not require this indicator, right? So there are three intangible assets which requires mandatory impairment testing at least once in a year. Which were these three assets? Intangible asset with an indefinite useful life, intangible asset not yet available for use, and goodwill acquired in business combination. These are the three assets which requires mandatory impairment testing. Okay. So this is what we covered. Then friends, we discussed fair value less cost to sell and value in use. So for example, if you have computed fair value less cost to sell and this fair value less cost to sell is more than the carrying value, in that case, you are not required to compute value in use or vice versa. If you have computed value in use and it is beyond carrying value, it is more than the carrying value, in that case, you're not required to compute fair value less cost to sell. Why? Because anyways, your recoverable value should be higher of fair value less cost to sell and carrying value. Sorry, and value in use. Right. Then we discussed fair value. Fair value is a market price. It's the price that would be received to sell an asset or paid to transfer a liability in an orderly transaction between market participants at a measurement date. So this definition is coming from Ind AS 113, fair value measurement standard, right? So not much relevant from the definition perspective. But and what is the cost of disposal? Important. Cost of disposal is incremental cost, which is directly attributable to the disposal of an asset or cash generating unit, excluding finance cost and income tax expenses. Means incremental cost directly attributable means if this asset would not have been sold, this cost would not have been incurred. Okay. This cost would not have been incurred. For example, valuation fee is not a cost of disposal. Why? Because after getting a valuation, you may decide not to sell the asset. Okay. But stamp duty, transfer charges, this will be incurred only when you will sell the asset. Okay. So cost of disposal is an incremental directly attributable cost, which will come when you will sell the asset, which will not come if you will not sell the asset. Okay. So this example we have discussed, value in use is a present value of future cash flows. Okay, present value of future cash flows. You need to estimate the future cash flow and you need to estimate the discount rate also. What is a discount rate? Discount rate is an incremental borrowing cost. It's an incremental borrowing cost. Discount rate is a incremental borrowing cost. It's a pre-tax rate. And your cash flow. So you need to measure the cash flows. You need to estimate the future cash flows, which is directly related to the asset. And when I say cash flows means inflow as well as outflow. Okay. So inflow as well as outflow. This cash flow is always required to be measured as per the asset in the current condition. Okay. And this cash flow is related to the continuing use of the asset as well as terminal cash flow as well. Okay. So this is what we have discussed around cash flow. What is not required to be included? For example, the future restructuring, the company is saying that I'm owning 100 fleet of cars. Okay. In future, I will spend a huge amount in technology and my car will become driverless cars and I will be able to save the driver cost. So these future restructuring, this future technology should not be taken into consideration while computing the cash flows. Okay. So improving or enhancing the asset performance, cash inflow or outflow from financing activity, income tax receipt or payment, these are not required to be computed in the cash flow estimates. Discount rate we discussed. Then friends, we discussed foreign currency future cash flows. Okay. If you have an asset in the foreign currency, in the foreign territory, in that case, it is very simple. If your asset is into the foreign country, if it is into the foreign territory, you need to estimate the future cash flows in the foreign currency, because that asset will give you the foreign currency cash flows, okay, not INR cash flows. So first of all, estimate the future cash flows in the foreign currency. Then you need to apply the discount rate relevant to that foreign currency. Okay, then you need to compute the value in use in the foreign currency. Whatever value in use comes in the foreign currency, you need to multiply that value in use with the spot rate. Okay, and then it will come under the INR or India or domestic currency, right? So translate the present value using spot exchange rate. This example we have done from your from the test your knowledge part, and we have also done one of the comprehensive illustration which talks about how to compute the impairment loss, how to compute the revised carrying value, how to compute the revised depreciation. Okay, so this is what we have discussed in the last class. I believe all of you are able to revise or recap the last class. Okay, great. Great. Okay. So I can see a lot of students have joined so far. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Abrikesh, Ankita, Anu, Tushar, Hemant, Karthik, Monica, Niranjan, Nisha, Ginny, Pooja, Stephen, Sumit, Vignesh. Good morning, students. And few students are there on the portal. So good morning, Rajat, Rahul, Ridvi. Great. So good morning, everyone. Let's start the today's agenda. Okay. So impairment loss measurement. Impairment loss, important points. Impairment loss should be recognized in P&L, right? For example, there is an impairment. Where this impairment will go? Where this impairment will go? This impairment will go to the P&L. This impairment will go to the P&L always. But what happens if the asset is subsequently measured at revaluation model? What happened then? Then what happened? If the asset is measured at cost model, it is pretty simple that if asset is measured at cost model, then you are required to put the impairment loss in the P&L. But if the asset, for example, building or machinery, there is an impairment in the building and machinery, okay, and the building and machinery is measured as per the revaluation model, okay, and there is an impairment in the revaluation model, then how to treat that impairment loss? Tell me, friends. You guys have already covered Ind AS 16, Ind AS 38. बताओ क्या होगा? What will happen? Okay. Anu is saying reduce from revaluation surplus. Very good. Nisha is also saying the same thing. Ginny is saying then if there is a revaluation surplus, then it will go to OCI and from that it will go to retained earnings. So Ginny, you are saying something different. Sumit is saying revaluation account. Hemant is saying decrease the revaluation surplus. Absolutely right. So friends, what is the concept? The concept is impairment loss is required to be recognized in P&L, except if the asset is on revaluation model, then decrease in value needs to be adjusted from revaluation surplus, if any. Okay. This is what we have read in Ind AS 16 and Ind AS 38 also. Okay. For example, let's discuss with the help of this example. A Limited has a carrying value of machinery for rupees 10,000. Carrying value 10,000. The company has opted for revaluation model and the fair value comes out at rupees 15,000 at the end of the next year. The fair value post this year comes out to 12,000. Please suggest how this impairment loss will be treated. Okay. So let me explain with the help of these dates. 31st March 20, what was the value? 10,000. 31st March 21, what is the value? It becomes 15,000. Okay. then it becomes 12,000. This is what given in the example. Okay. So on 31st March 21, there is an increase. There is an increase of rupees 5,000. Increase of rupees 5,000. Okay. Where this increase of 5,000 will go? This increase of 5,000 will go to revaluation surplus. Where is this decrease of 3,000 will go? Where this decrease of 3,000 will go? This 3,000 decrease is an impairment loss. Where it will go? There is an impairment loss of 3,000. कहाँ जाएगा?
Revaluation reserve debit.
Adjust it from revaluation reserve, revaluation surplus. Correct? Adjust it from revaluation surplus. Extending this example further. For example, on 31st March 23. On 31st March 23, this machinery becomes 8,000. Okay. Again, there is a decrease of how much? There is a decrease of 4,000. अगले साल फिर 4,000 रुपए वैल्यू कम हो गई. There is an impairment loss of 4,000. Where this impairment loss of 4,000 will go now? Where this will go? Very good, Anu. 2,000 from revaluation surplus and 2,000 from P&L. Very good. So 2,000 adjusted from revaluation surplus and balance 2,000 from what? Balance 2,000 recognized in P&L. Okay. Karthik, is that clear? This is what your question is. I was about to cover this concept. What is the accounting entry? Revaluation surplus. What is the accounting entry? Accounting entry क्या होगी इसकी? Revaluation surplus OCI account debit. Revaluation surplus OCI account debit. Impairment loss P&L account debit. To what? To machinery. Credit. Revaluation surplus 2,000, P&L 2,000, machinery 4,000. Is that fine, Nisha? Is that fine, Abrakesh? Anu, Stephen, Karthik, Zini, Pooja, is that fine? Very good. So, my dear friends, if it is a revaluation model, if it is a cost model, doesn't matter. Impairment testing has to be done. Okay. I mean to say impairment testing has to be done. If there is an impairment, if the recoverable value is lower than the carrying value, impairment has to be charged. Okay. The only thing is, if you are following a cost model, impairment will always go to P&L. But if you are following a revaluation model, you need to check whether revaluation surplus exists. If it exists, in that case, if there is any impairment to the extent of revaluation surplus, adjust it from revaluation surplus. If the impairment is more than the available revaluation surplus, then the balance will go to P&L. As simple as that. Correct? Perfectly fine. Shall I move on to the next concepts, guys? Okay. And whenever there is an impairment loss, how will you compute the revised depreciation we discussed in the last class? How will we compute the revised depreciation?
On revalued value.
On revalued value. Very good. So always remember, normally what happened. So there is a myth or misconception in mind that my depreciation is cost divided by useful life. No. My depreciation is depreciable amount divided by the useful life. And what is a useful life? Useful life is a remaining life. Okay. So every year, you have to check the carrying value, and carrying value divided by remaining useful life is the depreciation charge for the next year. Okay. समझ आया? So you need to compute the carrying value. Whatever is the carrying value, that carrying value has to be divided by the remaining useful life, and that will become the depreciation for that year. Okay. So if you always keep this concept in your mind, you are not required to learn any concept. Okay. You are not required to learn this concept. Carrying value, जो भी value बची है, opening value 1st April 2024, for example, divide by life कितनी बची है, for example 5 years, तो वो depreciation होगा उस साल का. Correct? Deferred tax asset, deferred tax liability. Whether income tax department consider this impairment loss as a allowable expense in the P&L? क्या इनकम टैक्स डिपार्टमेंट कंसिडर करता है इसको? You understand na tax treatment? You guys must have filed income tax return. You guys have seen the depreciation under Income Tax Act is different from the depreciation under Companies Act.
Yes.
So whether income tax department consider this impairment loss?
No.
Income tax department says this is a notional charge. We don't know what is impairment. In our books, this impairment word does not exist. So income tax department says that we don't understood what is impairment. Okay. So let's say, let me explain with the help of an example. I hope my Excel file is visible. Whether my Excel file is visible?
Yes, sir.
Concept. Deferred tax asset, DTA/DTL treatment in case of impairment. In case of impairment loss. Okay. For example, a machinery was purchased for rupees 1 lakh. Okay. For rupees 1 lakh. The impairment loss on such machine was booked for rupees 20,000. For rupees 20,000. Okay. Advise the tax treatment and book treatment. And treatment in the books of accounts. And treatment in the books of accounts. In the books of accounts. Okay. What is the carrying value? What is the carrying value in the books of accounts? Carrying value. What is the carrying value in the books of accounts? 1 lakh rupees. So my carrying value in the books of account is cost minus depreciation. Sorry, cost minus impairment loss less impairment loss Okay. This is my carrying value. Books of account, and this is my tax base. In tax base, this 20,000 will not be considered. For tax base, for in the tax accounts, in the tax books, this 1 lakh will be there. Okay. So this 1 lakh will be depreciated. For example, life For example, life is 5 years. 5 years. So what will happen? In the textbooks, in the text base, this will be depreciated. This will be depreciated as a WDV method, 15% every year. It keeps on depreciating. In the books of account, this 80,000 will be depreciated over a period of 5 years, 16,000 every year, right? So technically speaking, इनकम टैक्स में तो इनकम टैक्स के हिसाब से डेप्रिसिएशन चलता रहेगा 15% WDV एज पर सेक्शन 32 ऑफ इनकम टैक्स एक्ट. बट बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स में क्या होगा? वॉट एवर इज द कैरिंग वैल्यू, दैट कैरिंग वैल्यू हैज टू बी डेप्रिसिएटेड, okay, over the period of time. So in the books versus in the income tax, there is a difference. Okay, if I will see that this carrying value, my asset under books is lower and my tax base is higher, मेरी टैक्स बेस, मेरी बुक्स में एसेट की वैल्यू कम है, टैक्स के बुक्स में एसेट की वैल्यू ज्यादा है. सो व्हाट इज क्रिएटेड इन दिस, और व्हाट विल बी क्रिएटेड हियर? डेफर्ड टैक्स एसेट और डेफर्ड टैक्स लायबिलिटी. क्या होगा? आप क्या बनाते हो? अगर आपका बुक्स के अंदर एसेट की वैल्यू कम है और टैक्स के अंदर एसेट की वैल्यू ज्यादा है ड्यू टू डेप्रिसिएशन डिफरेंस, व्हाट डू यू क्रिएट? डीटीए और डीटीएल? DTA. Okay, and I will give you a simple trick to understand what is whether it is DTA or DTL. On one hand, keep the books of accounts. On my left hand, it is books of accounts. And what is it? 80,000 rupees. On my right hand, it is tax accounts, textbooks. And in the textbooks, it is 1 lakh. So my books of account is lower, my textbooks is higher. My asset is higher in the textbooks. Now I have to align my books and tax. I have to pass an accounting entry. तो मुझे क्या करना पड़ेगा? मेरे को एसेट बढ़ाना पड़ेगा. If I have to align my books and tax, मेरी बुक्स में एसेट की वैल्यू कम है, टैक्स में एसेट की वैल्यू ज्यादा है. My asset is higher in tax books, my asset is lower in books. So what I need to do to align tax and books? I need to increase my asset. What does it mean? I need to create an asset. I need to create a deferred tax asset. Okay. I need to create a deferred tax asset. Okay. So for example, tax rate is 30%. So in this case, what will happen in this case? In this case, deferred tax asset needs to be recognized. On what value? On the difference between book base and tax base. Okay. So friends, I just want to make you guys clarify that this impairment loss, whenever there is an impairment loss, there will be a difference between the asset value in the textbooks and the asset value in the books of accounts. Okay. So on that impairment loss, deferred tax asset needs to be created. DTA needs to be created. Why? Because income tax disallow this. Okay. Sir, what is deferred tax asset? What is deferred tax liability? This you will understand while studying Ind AS 12. जब आप Ind AS 12 पढ़ोगे तो आप इसको डिस्कस करोगे, तब आप इसको अंडरस्टैंड करोगे. ओके, राइट? So this was just a concept, important concept to understand. Okay. Let's discuss one of the illustration from ICAI study material. Mercury Limited has an identifiable asset. It has an identifiable asset with a carrying amount of rupees 1,000. Its recoverable amount is rupees 650. The tax rate is 30%. The tax base of the asset is 800. So carrying value is 1,000. Recoverable value is 650. It means what is impairment loss? 350. So carrying value under books of accounts will become 650. And the carrying value under textbooks is 800. Okay. Impairment losses are not deductible for tax purposes. What would be the impact of impairment loss on the deferred tax asset or liability against the revised carrying amount of asset? Quickly batao. Compare the carrying value of books and carrying value of tax. What is my carrying value in books?
Difference will be DTA.
What is my carrying value in books? 650. What is my carrying value in tax? 800. What is the difference? 150. 150 is the difference in value. What is my tax rate? 30%. 150 multiplied by 30%. What is that? 150 multiplied by 30%. 45. 45 is the value of deferred tax asset. Correct? The answer is there on your screen. Okay. I hope it is clear. Clear or clear? Clear in mind or clear from mind? Is that clear? Okay, very good. So just a minute. Yes, so we have covered this illustration number 5 as well. Let's go to the next part. So friends, now we have reached to the most important part, cash generating unit. What is cash generating unit? Stephen, what is cash generating unit? Group of assets. Cash generating unit is a group of assets. Okay. Not class of asset, it's a group of assets. So Nisha, the difference between group of asset and class of asset, the class of asset, in a class of assets, the same nature of assets are grouped. But in group of assets, the different nature assets can also be grouped, right? So this is my difference between group of asset and class of asset. Okay. So just give me a minute. Okay. So cash generating unit, a unit which can generate cash, a unit which can generate cash. Cash generating unit, a unit which can generate cash means a group. Unit means a group of asset which can generate cash. In Tata Motors, have you seen any automobile plant? Have you seen any automobile plant? Or have you seen any factory where a lot of machineries are there? Yeah. Okay. So if you have seen any plant or a factory, what happens? Generally, there are series of machinery. If I talk about automobile plant, if I talk about Tata Motors, the Tata Motors has various machineries, has various big machineries in their plant. For example, how these cars are getting manufactured, right? So first of all, they acquire some steel, they acquire some plastic, steel, etc., etc. So there is one machine which manufacture the structure of that car. Okay, so the steel will come and that machine will compress the steel and make a structure of the car. Then it will go to the next machine. That what the next machine will do, that next machine will paint the entire structure of the car. The third machine will do the wiring and other automation in that car. The fourth machine will put the seats and sofa on that car. Okay. The fifth machine will put the tire in that car. So if you have seen on YouTube video, or if you have seen the plant, while your articleship period, if you get a chance to look at that, so there are series of machineries. When this car comes into the first machine, it is just like a raw material. It is just like a raw material. It is just like a sheet of steel. It is just like that. And when it went through 10-15 machineries, and when it is coming out from the last machine, last plant, so it is coming out as a car which can run on its own wheels. What this is called, what this entire series of machineries are called. You have absolutely mentioned it right, Nisha. It is assembly line. This is called as an assembly line. This is called as assembly line. Friends, in that Tata Motors plant, tell me what is the group of asset which can generate cash flow independently? Can this group of asset, assembly line, can generate cash flow independently? Yes. Why? This group of machineries are able to manufacture a finished product, manufacture a car, right? And these car can be sold into the market, correct? These car can be sold into the market and they can make money. Are you getting me? But if I will remove 3 machineries in between this assembly line, right? Can the other group of machine will be able to generate the cash flow? I mean to say, whether these other group of machineries will be able to manufacture this car as a final product? Answer is no. Answer is no, right? Or any individual machinery will be able to manufacture the car? Answer is no. The entire assembly line will be able to manufacture the car. Okay. And hence, this entire assembly line put together will be able to generate the cash flow independently. Okay. So this is cash generating unit. This is meant by cash generating unit. What is the formula of, what is the definition of cash generating unit? Cash generating unit is the smallest. It is smallest identifiable. It is the smallest identifiable group of assets that generate cash inflows that are largely independent of the cash inflows from other asset or group of assets. Simple definition. Cash generating unit is the smallest identifiable group of asset which can generate cash flow independently. Right? Friends, standard says that first of all, you need to determine the recoverable amount for the individual asset. You need to determine the recoverable amount for individual asset. Okay. You need to determine the recoverable amount for the individual asset. If it is not possible to estimate the recoverable amount of the individual asset, then the entity should determine the recoverable amount of the cash generating unit to which the asset belongs. For example, there is an entire assembly line. In the assembly line, there is one machine which is used for fixing the tire in the car. There is a machine like robot. The car is in between. So the machine pick the tires. The machine will put the tires in the cars, right? Okay. Pick the tire, put the tire in the car. And just, they put the nut bolt, they tight the bolt, and they do all the tuning and alignment and balancing of the tires in that car. That machine is doing. So now, of course, the company has purchased that machine. Now, the company wants to compute the recoverable value of that machine. Company wants to compute the recoverable value of that machine. So whether the company will be able to compute the recoverable value of that particular machine. कंपनी निकाल पाएगी उस मशीन की रिकवरेबल वैल्यू? रिकवरेबल वैल्यू का फॉर्मूला क्या होता है? Any student who want to answer other than Abrakesh? I am waiting for the answer.
Fair value and value in use, whichever is higher.
Fair value less cost to sell and value in use, whichever is higher. So Nisha and Karthik has given the right answer. So Karthik told that, sir, value in use would be difficult to bifurcate, I guess. You are absolutely right, Karthik. Nisha is saying specific cash flow to the machine cannot be identified. You are absolutely right. Since this machine is not generating any cash flow, this machine is just fixing the tire, right? So, and hence the value in use would be difficult to determine for this machine, okay? Because it is not giving any cash flow. So friends, the basic mantra, the basic rule is identify the recoverable amount for the individual asset. If it is not possible to determine the recoverable amount of the individual asset, then you need to find out a group, a smallest group to which this asset belongs to, right? So that if the individual asset fair value is not determined, right, then we will determine the recoverable value of the asset to which recoverable value of the group to which this asset belongs to. So this particular asset belongs to which group? Which group? This belongs to assembly line. This belongs to entire series of machinery which is manufacturing car. Assembly line, right? So this assembly line will become your cash generating unit. So what is cash generating unit? A unit, a group of asset, a smallest identifiable group of asset which can generate cash independently, Is that clear? तो आप क्या करोगे? ग्रुप ऑफ एसेट्स का कैश फ्लो निकालोगे, ग्रुप ऑफ एसेट्स की रिकवरेबल वैल्यू निकालोगे और फिर उसके बाद इंपेयरमेंट लॉस उस पे एलोकेट करेंगे. करेक्ट? Correct? Is there anyone who does not know the concept of cash generating unit? It is there in AS 28 also. Anyone who does not know the concept of cash generating unit? If you have forgot the concept of cash generating unit, that is okay. But is there anyone who have not heard about cash generating unit? So cash generating unit is the smallest identifiable group of assets which can generate cash flow independently. Right. Let's understood with the help of illustration number 16. A bus company provides services under contract with a municipality that requires minimum service on each of 7 separate routes. How many of you belongs to Delhi? Anyone belongs to Delhi? Okay, 3-4 students belongs to Delhi. Okay. So in Delhi there is a in Delhi the buses which are running is under DTC, Delhi Transport Corporation, DTC. Have you heard about DTC buses? DTC buses, right?
Yes.
So what happened? This DTC, Delhi Transport Corporation, gives a permit, gives a license to operate the buses on various routes. Okay. So likewise, this bus company, there is a bus company, private bus company, which under a contract with DTC municipality that required minimum service on each of the 7 routes, 7 separate routes. Okay. Asset devoted to each route and the cash flow from each route can be identified separately. So a private limited bus company went to the municipality and they told that we want to run buses on the roads of Delhi. The municipality told, okay, but you need to operate on the 7 routes, on the 7 different routes on the roads of Delhi. They told, okay, right. But one of the routes operates at a significant loss. Okay, so there are 7 different routes like Sahadra to Janakpuri, Lakshmi Nagar to Sultanpuri, okay, ITO to Madangir. So likewise, there are 7 routes, 7 separate routes. And of course, if there are 7 separate routes, 7 separate buses will be allocated on those routes. 7 separate driver will drive. 7 separate conductor will collect the ticket price. Okay. So 7 buses are different. The conductor, driver, buses, fare, fuel, everything is separate. Everything is separate. Monica, can you please mute yourself? So, but out of the 7 routes, 1 route is at a significant losses, right? If 1 route is at a significant losses, is there an indicator of impairment? Is there an indicator of impairment? Yes. अगर एक रूट लॉस में है तो इंडिकेटर है ना इम्पेयरमेंट का, मतलब the assets deployed on the route, on that route are not able to provide the sufficient future economic benefit. Okay. Should the company determine the recoverable amount for an individual asset or a cash generating unit? In this case, whether the company should determine the recoverable amount for an individual route, individual asset on that route, or a cash or entire cash generating unit. Think about this. Think about this. Anila is saying entire cash generating unit. Entire cash generating unit. What about others? So Anila has given the justification for that. She told that, sir, license is for all 7 routes put together. Yes, you are right. So this is for entire cash generating unit. Why? If you will cut down this one route which is in significant losses, you will not be able to run the buses on 6 profitable routes as well. आपको एक रूट पे जो कि लॉस में है, उस एक रूट पे लॉस क्यों है? क्योंकि आप 6 रूट पे प्रॉफिट अर्न कर रहे हो, राइट? So this municipality has given the license or permit for running on all 7 routes put together, right? All 7 routes put together. You are able to make money. You are able to generate profits on the 6 routes. Why? Because you are also running on the 7 routes, on the 7th route, right? So this 7th route should not be seen in isolation, right? The permit is not route wise. The permit is for 7 routes put together, right? And hence, this one route, while in significant losses, should not be considered for impairment as an individual asset level. Rather, the impairment testing has to be done for the entire cash generating unit, 7 buses, 7 routes put together. What is my license cost? What is my buses cost? What is my driver salary? What is the amount I'm collecting? The present value of all those future cash flows put together will become a recoverable value of a cash generating unit. Right? So the answer is right. It is on a CGU level because the entity does not have the option to cut down any one bus route. The lowest level of identifiable cash flows, which is independent from the cash flow of other asset or groups, is the cash inflow generated by 7 routes put together. The cash generating unit for each route is the bus company as a whole. Means what is the cash generating unit? 7 buses put together is the cash generating unit. Anyone who is not able to understand this question? Anyone who is not able to understand this question? Can you please let me know if you are not able to understand this question? Right? So we have covered this illustration number 16 as well. Anyone who has not understood this? Anu Sharma, sir, I am unable to get it. So friends, what is the basic concept? You have to determine the recoverable value at the asset level, right? But if it is not possible to determine the recoverable value at asset level, then you have to go to the group of asset level, that this asset belongs to which group, right? In this given question, there are 7 assets, there are 7 routes, okay, on which this company is running the buses. The company is generating cash flow on all the 7 routes. The company has deployed asset on all the 7 routes. Right? The question comes whether all these assets, okay, which is deployed on the 7 routes are individual assets from the perspective of impairment testing, or it is a cash generating unit. The 7 buses put together is cash generating unit. Right? The bigger question is, if you will say that, sir, every asset is an individual asset, and hence we can compute the recoverable value of each and every asset individually. Will you be able to do that? While I totally understand that the buses are different, the useful life of the buses are different, separate, not different, separate. The cash flow generated on each buses are separate. Each buses has one driver, one conductor, the ticket collection is separate, the routes are separate, the fuel is separate, right? But the point is, if a particular route is in losses, can we say that we need to do the impairment testing only on that route? Answer is no. Why? Because you have that one route which is into losses, right? Due to this one route, you are able to make the profit on the other 6 routes. इस एक लॉस मेकिंग रूट की वजह से आप 6 अदर रूट्स पे प्रॉफिट बना पा रहे हो. क्यों? क्योंकि आपको 7 रूट्स पे ऑपरेट करने का कॉन्ट्रैक्ट इकट्ठा मिला है. यू गॉट द कॉन्ट्रैक्ट फॉर रनिंग ऑन 7 रूट्स पुट टुगेदर, नॉट ऑन इंडिविजुअल रूट्स. ओके, एंड हेंस when you will compute the cash flows, when you compute the value in use, you cannot compute the value in use for individual routes. You have to compute the value in use for the entire 7 routes put together, entire 7 assets put together. Okay, आप पूरे का निकालोगे, not only one route. Okay, and hence you have to compute it at a CGU level, not at a individual asset level. Okay, right? So what are the factors to consider in identification of CGU? It should be able to generate independent cash flows from other assets. Okay, it should be able to generate independent cash flows. Okay. For example, there are 3 machines. Okay, machine A is using some raw material, and machine A is providing the semi-finished output. Okay, then machine A transferred that semi-finished output to the other machine B. That other machine B do some modification, and this machine B also provides some semi-finished output, and then it transferred to machine C, and machine C provides a finished output. Okay, समझ में आया? मशीन A, मशीन B, मशीन C. मशीन A के अंदर रॉ मटेरियल डाला, मशीन A ने एक सेमी फिनिश्ड आउटपुट प्रोड्यूस किया. मशीन A ने मशीन B को दिया, मशीन B ने मशीन C को दिया, मशीन C से फिनिश गुड निकल गया. This entire machine A, B, C, they are using internally. Means everyone's input is the last one's output. And whatever is produced by machine A and machine B, it is also sellable in the market. ये market में sell भी होता है. That semi-finished output is also sellable in the market. While this company is not selling that semi-finished output in the market, this company is using internally for manufacturing the final finished output. Okay. But this machine, whatever output produced, is also sellable in the market. My question is whether machine A and machine B, whether the recoverable value can be determined from machine A and machine B. Answer is yes. The fact that the outputs are used internally does not mean that machines are not able to generate cash flows independently. Okay, so if an active market exists for the output produced by group of assets, that group of assets should be identified as a cash generating unit, even if some or all of the output is used internally. So in this case, machine A, machine B, machine C, all these 3 machines, you can compute the recoverable value independently, individually in all those 3 machines, right? So this is what it talks about. Whenever you are identifying any cash generating unit, it has to be consistent from one period to another. You cannot say that in this year we have five machineries, 5 assets, which is CGU. In the next year, there are 10 assets which will become CGU. It has to be consistent. Sir, if we have computed the impairment loss on a cash generating unit, how do we allocate the impairment loss on cash generating unit? How do we allocate? Okay. Friends, a group of assets may have goodwill also. A cash generating unit may have goodwill also. Okay. So let me explain the allocation of cash generating unit. Allocation of cash generating unit. Let me take you to the Excel file. I believe my Excel file is visible. concept allocation of impairment loss on cash generating unit. Allocation of impairment loss on cash generating unit. Friends, I will take 3 examples, and with the 3 examples, your entire concepts of allocation of cash generating unit will be clear, right? It will be clear. So let me discuss those examples. Allocation of cash generating unit, allocation of impairment loss to cash generating unit. Case 1, first of all. Case 1. Cash generating unit, there is a group of assets. This is a CGU, which includes goodwill, building, machinery, software. Goodwill, building, machinery, software. Okay. So what is the total value of the cash generating unit? 90 lakhs. The recoverable value of the cash generating unit is 60 million. So 6 crores, not 90 lakhs. It is 90 million. Recoverable value is 60 million. Compute impairment loss on CGU and show how to allocate the impairment loss on multiple assets of CGU and their revised carrying value post-retirement. And their revised carrying value post-retirement. Post-impairment. Not retirement, post-impairment. Okay. So the carrying value is given for this cash generating unit. The recoverable value is given for this cash generating unit. We need to compute the impairment loss on cash generating unit, and we need to determine how to allocate the impairment loss on multiple assets of CGU and their revised carrying value post impairment. Carrying value. What is my carrying value? 90 million. What is my recoverable value? Recoverable value. It is 60 million. What is the impairment loss? What is the impairment loss? 30 million is the impairment loss. I think this is clear to everyone. 30 million is the impairment loss. Hemant is asking, sir, why goodwill should be included in CGU? Hemant, first of all, let me clarify, and not only to Hemant, but everyone. What is a cash generating unit? It's a group of assets which can generate cash flow independently. What is a business? What is a business? The business is a group of assets. The business is a group of assets, right? Business क्या होता है? Tata Motors Limited is a business. That business has 5 plants. Tata Motors has 5 plants. Each plant is a cash generating unit. Each plant is having a group of assets, right? So each plant is having a group of assets. Okay. So each plant is a cash generating unit. What is a business? What is Tata Motors? Tata Motors is a group of CGU. CGU is a group of assets. Tata Motors Limited is a group of CGUs, right? What is a goodwill? Goodwill. What is a goodwill? Goodwill is an asset which helps in generating the efficiency in business, which helps in generating the efficiency in business, which helps in generating a premium in the business, which helps in generating the more future economic benefit in the business. Correct. This goodwill does not have a physical existence. Goodwill का कोई physical existence नहीं होता. Okay. This goodwill provides synergy. This goodwill is like a premium. और ये goodwill कहाँ से आती है? ये goodwill assets को use करने से आती है.
बट सर जब लॉस हो रहा है तो गुडविल सबसे पहले इम्पेयर होनी चाहिए.
मोनिका है, जस्ट होल्ड ऑन. अभी मैं वहां तक नहीं पहुंचा. अभी मैं वहां तक नहीं पहुंचा. अभी आई एम आंसरिंग दैट वेदर कैश जनरेटिंग यूनिट कैन हैव अ गुडविल और इट कैन नॉट हैव अ गुडविल. आई एम आंसरिंग टू दैट. ओके. So if goodwill is for the entire company, if goodwill is for the business, right? So this goodwill is helping in the cash generating units, right? This business consists of cash generating unit, which is generating cash. The business is generating cash. So standard says that goodwill requires to be allocated on the cash generating units, right? On the cash generating units also. मतलब जो बिजनेस की गुडविल है, जब आप उस बिजनेस को ड्रिल डाउन कर रहे हो at a granular level, so goodwill needs to be allocated to that business, that unit as well, that group of asset as well, that CGU as well, right? This is the requirement of the standard. कि आपका जो cash generating unit, it is just like a business segment. It is just like a business segment, and the goodwill of the business has to be divided into the business segment. Why? Because this goodwill is helping in those cash generating unit also. आप कैश जनरेटिंग यूनिट से ही तो कैश जनरेट कर रहे हो, राइट? और बिजनेस क्या है? ग्रुप ऑफ कैश जनरेटिंग यूनिट है. तो अगर बिजनेस की गुडविल है तो कैश जनरेटिंग यूनिट में एलोकेट भी तो होना चाहिए, करेक्ट? दिस इज व्हाई द कैश जनरेटिंग यूनिट विल हैव अ गुडविल आल्सो. इट विल हैव अ गुडविल आल्सो. ओके. नाउ वी हैव अ कैरिंग वैल्यू of a cash generating unit, which is a 90 million, which includes goodwill, building, machinery, software. Software is an intangible asset, right? So a cash generating unit may have tangible asset, intangible asset, goodwill, etc. Okay, it may have. In this case, the impairment loss is 30 million. The question is how to allocate this impairment loss. How to allocate this impairment loss? That is the bigger question. How to allocate the impairment loss? Allocation of impairment loss. Hemant, I hope it is clear now. Allocation of impairment loss. Anyone who can guide me how to allocate the impairment loss? The impairment loss is 30 million. कैसे allocate करूं इसको? How to allocate the impairment loss?
The goodwill completely write down, and remaining 10 is divided in a proportionately basis.
Yes, you are right, Monica. Standard says that whenever there is an impairment loss on the group of assets, on the cash generating unit, first adjust the goodwill to the extent of impairment loss. First, adjust the impairment loss in the goodwill. Adjust the goodwill to the extent of impairment loss. Then adjust the other assets in proportion to their carrying values, right? First, you need to adjust the goodwill. In this case, what is my impairment loss? 30 million. What is my value of the goodwill? 20 million. First of all, I will put the entire available impairment loss to the extent of goodwill, and I will wipe out the goodwill. I will wipe out the goodwill. Okay. This goodwill will become zero. What is my revised carrying value? Revised carrying. This goodwill will become zero. Okay. How much impairment loss still left? How much impairment loss still left? 10 million. How can I compute? How can I allocate this 10 million on the other assets? In the proportion to their, in the proportion to their carrying value. So what is the proportion? 3:2:2. 3:2:2. The remaining 10 million, I will adjust in the proportion of their carrying value. So minus 10 multiply by 30 divide by 30 plus 20 plus 20. Divide by what? Divide by sum of what? 30 plus 20 plus 20, 70. करेक्ट? ये क्लियर है सबको? -10 मैं सिंपल प्रोपोर्शनेट कर रहा हूं, 10 मिलियन को डिवाइड कर रहा हूं बिल्डिंग, मशीनरी एंड सॉफ्टवेयर में. सिंपल. मल्टीप्लाई बाय 20 डिवाइड बाय 70. कैन आई राइट 70? -10 मल्टीप्लाई बाय 20 डिवाइड बाय 70, राइट? 30. सो दिस कम्स आउट एज अ 30 आ गया. Now, what is my revised carrying value? What is my revised carrying value? My revised carrying value is, it should be 60. It should be 60. Any doubt here? Any question here? So the simple rule is, first you need to adjust goodwill, then the other assets in the ratio of their carrying value. Then you need to pro rata, then you need to allocate the impairment loss on a pro rata basis in the proportion of the other assets. Now I am making it little complex. Let me make it little complex. What is that complexity? Case 2. Okay. So I am repeating this case 1 as it is, and I am adding one more information. This is case 2. Goodwill 20, building 30, machinery 20, software 20. The recoverable value is 60 million. Compute impairment loss on CGU and determine how to allocate the impairment loss on multiple assets of CGU and the revised carrying value post-retirement. And I've also given the recoverable value. The recoverable value of the building is rupees 32 million, is INR 32 million. The recoverable value of the building is INR 32 million. Can a particular asset in the CGU may have the recoverable value? Yes. हो सकता है ना. मान लो अगर एक ग्रुप में 5 मशीनरी हैं, एक ग्रुप में, और एक मशीनरी की आप फेयर वैल्यू निकाल सकते हो, एक मशीनरी का वैल्यू न्यूज निकाल सकते हो, राइट? That machine has a recoverable value. But the point is, the other 4 assets does not have a recoverable value, and that is why these 4 assets are clubbed with this machinery to make it a group of assets, to make it a cost cash generating unit. Correct? ये तो clear है ना सबको? This is clear to everyone, na? So every asset in a CGU does not mean that every asset does not have a recoverable value individually. Okay. So probably the other assets which does not have a recoverable value individually may need to be clubbed with the other group of assets to make it a cash generating unit, right? So friends, in this example, how to allocate the impairment loss? Tell me how to allocate the impairment loss.
Sir, accept the building, remaining 2 assets, divide 10 millions.
Very good. Very good. So what is my carrying value? My carrying value is 90, recoverable value is 60, impairment loss is 30, right? Impairment loss is 30. So what to allocate? First need to allocate in goodwill. So minus 20 to kar denge. So revised carrying value of goodwill will become 0. Remarks. Let me put some remarks here. Goodwill written off. Goodwill written off. Then the 10 million. 10 million has to be allocated pro rata. No. If an individual asset has a recoverable value which is more than the carrying value, that individual asset will not be impaired. This individual asset will not be impaired, right? Why? Because the recoverable value is more than the carrying value. Hence, no allocation of impairment. Hence, no allocation of impairment loss. Okay. Understood? Understood? So the carrying value will become 30. Recoverable value is more than the carrying value. Hence, no impairment loss is to be allocated. Okay. Clear? Now the remaining 10 million, remaining 10 million has to be allocated on pro rata basis. Okay. So minus 10 multiply by 20 divide by 40 minus 10 multiply by 20 divide by 40 right? This will come out as a 30 million and this is my carrying value. This is the total. So remaining, so impairment loss has to be divided on a pro rata basis. Impairment loss allocated on pro rata basis. One of the student is asking building revised carrying value is 30 or 32. Anyone who wants to give the answer? You guys have already read Ind AS 16 also. Ind AS 16, 38. Anyone who wants to
Building
give
is
the answer?
valued at the carrying value or the fair value, whichever is lower, recoverable value.
Okay. Karthik has given a right answer. So Karthik has written, sir, if revaluation model is opted, then 32. Otherwise 30 only. Very good, Karthik. Friends, first of all, please understood the relevance of impairment of asset standard. This standard only check whether your carrying value is higher than the recoverable value. If the carrying value is higher than the recoverable value, then you need to reduce your carrying value to the recoverable value. अगर आपकी carrying value recoverable value से ज्यादा है तो आपको carrying value को कम करके लाना है. If your recoverable value is higher than the carrying value, then you are not required to do anything. Then you have to see the other standard. For example, if it is a tangible asset, if it is a PPE, in that case, you have to see Ind AS 16. And under Ind AS 16, if you have opted for a revaluation model, then you have to consider that increase. Okay. But if you have opted for a cost model, then you are not required to consider for any increase, any revaluation surplus. Okay. Likewise in Ind AS 38 also. So my dear students, don't get confused. Please understand these kind of errors you will make in exam. आपके impairment of asset का खाली objective इतना सा है to check whether your carrying value is higher than the recoverable value. If yes, please reduce it to the recoverable value. But if your carrying value is lower than the recoverable value, then you are not required to do anything until and unless question will tell you the company has opted for a revaluation model, then this will be 32. Otherwise, it will always be 30. Okay. Is that clear? Is that clear? So we understood the same concept. In case there is a impairment loss on CGU, first it is the goodwill, then the other asset in the pro rata basis. And while determining the other asset on a pro rata basis, if an individual asset has a recoverable value more than the carrying value, that asset should not be touched. Let me make it little more complex. Case 3. Just a minute. Case 3. The recoverable value of the building is 28 million. The recoverable value of the building is given 28 million. What is my carrying value? 90. Recoverable value 60. ये तो वही होगा ना, सेम एग्जांपल है. सिर्फ मैंने क्या किया, मैंने बिल्डिंग की वैल्यू को 32 से 28 कर दिया. How to allocate the impairment loss, guys? How to allocate the impairment loss?
Sir, out of 10 millions, 2 millions allocate in the building and remaining in machinery and software.
Very good. So first of all, standard says that if there is any impairment loss on the group of asset, you need to, what you need to do? क्या करना है? अगर impairment loss है group of asset पे, सबसे पहले किसको उड़ाना है? Goodwill. Because goodwill, if you are saying that I have a loss in my cash generating unit, What does it mean? Then there is no goodwill. भाई आपके ग्रुप ऑफ एसेट में लॉस है. It means your present value of cash inflow is not sufficient to meet the present value of cash outflow. Okay, if there is a loss, it means you don't have any goodwill. So standard says that first of all, wipe out the notional asset. Wipe out the notional asset. Okay. So what is the notional asset? Notional asset is goodwill. So first of all, simple, minus 20. Goodwill will become 0. This is the guidance given in the standard, right, Prachi? Now I have 3 assets and I have a remaining 10 million. So if I'll do minus 10 multiply by 30 divide by 70 because pro rata, this is coming out as a 4.29. And what is the recoverable value of building, which is given in the question?
28.
28. It means what is the impairment loss on goodwill? Sorry, on building?
2 million only.
2 million. Standard says that if you have a recoverable value of individual asset, you cannot allocate the impairment loss. You cannot allocate the impairment loss on that particular individual asset more than the impairment loss which is there on that individual asset. उस individual asset का जो impairment loss है उससे ज्यादा आप allocate नहीं कर सकते. So in this case, how much I need to allocate?
2
million. Okay. So my carrying value is 28 million. Now I am left with how much? Now I am left with how much impairment loss? 8 million impairment loss. I left with 8 million impairment loss. So क्या करूं मैं 8 million impairment loss का? How can I allocate this 8 million impairment loss? Please help me.
4 each between machinery and software.
4 each between machinery and software. So let me put the remarks also for your quick reference so that when you see this Excel file, you'll be able to remember that goodwill written off. Allocation of impairment loss should not be more than the allocation of impairment loss should not be more than its individual impairment loss. Correct? And then the impairment loss allocated on pro rata. So minus 8 multiply by 20 divide by 40. Same, minus 8 multiply by 20 divide by 40. This is your carrying value. And this is your total impairment loss device carrying value. I hope with these 3 examples, you guys are clear that whenever there is an impairment loss on cash generating unit, first you need to adjust the goodwill. Then the remaining impairment loss needs to be allocated on the carrying value of the assets, right? If the individual if the individual recoverable value is there for that asset, so the impairment loss has to be charged on that that individual asset as per its own recoverable value, and then the remaining impairment loss has to be allocated to the remaining asset. Okay, is that clear? That clear? Clear or clear, friends? क्या हुआ? ये clear है या clear है? Okay, clear in mind. Very good. Very good. So this is what it is, right? So we understood this allocation of impairment loss part. Let me take you again on this part. So friends, impairment testing, we have already discussed. You remember I told you, no? You need to, whenever there is an asset or there is a cash generating unit, you need to see whether the indicator of impairment is there. If the indicator of impairment is there, then you need to check the impairment, otherwise not. But what happens with the 3 assets? You remember? 3 intangible asset, goodwill, intangible asset not yet available for use, intangible asset having indefinite life. Correct? So in those three cases, you are not required to see the indication of impairment. You are just required to do the impairment testing. Cash generating unit with goodwill, intangible asset with indefinite life or not yet available for use. If the indicator of impairment is there, then you need to check the impairment testing. You need to do the impairment testing, right? If there is no indication of impairment, there is a cash generating unit with goodwill, intangible asset with indefinite life or not yet available for use. So अगर कैश जनरेटिंग यूनिट में गुडविल है या फिर इंटेंजिबल एसेट है कौन सा, whose life is indefinite or which is not yet available for use, right? In that case, even though if there is no indication of impairment, you have to do the impairment test annually. But if there is an indicator of impairment on such assets, you have to be more frequent. You have to test for impairment even more than once in a year. Correct? This is what this standard talks about. Correct? Frequency and timing. What is meant by frequency and timing? So assets or CGU other than goodwill, intangible asset with indefinite life are not yet available for use. There is a cash generating unit which does not have these three assets, does not have a goodwill, intangible asset having indefinite life or intangible asset not yet available for use. So this group of asset, this CGU does not have these three kind of assets. In that case, if there is an indication of impairment, you need to test for impairment. If there is no indication of impairment, you are not required to test for any impairment. Even once in a year, you are not required to do. Okay. Once in a year mandatory कब है? जब वो तीन assets हों, individually या वो तीन assets किसी group का part हो. Right. So this is theoretical part, not relevant. Friends, before going to that, let me discuss one of the question from ICAI study material. Yes. Illustration number 20. XYZ Limited has a cash generating unit plant A as on 1st April 2001 having a carrying value of rupees 1000 crore. Plant A was acquired under a business combination and goodwill of rupees 200 crore was allocated to it. So what is given in the question? The question talks about cash generating unit, which is plant A. The carrying value of cash generating unit is also given, which is 1000 crore. And plant A was acquired under a business combination. This plant was acquired under a business combination and goodwill of rupees 200 crore was allocated to it. Okay. So first of all, this is a cash generating unit. The carrying value of 1000 crore is given and goodwill of 200 crore is also allocated to it. It is depreciated on a straight line basis. Useful life of 10 years with no residual value. So it means it is talking about the depreciation also, and 10-year life is given. On 31st March 2002, it means it is talking about after 1 year. Plant A has a recoverable amount of rupees 600 crores. Calculate the impairment loss on plant A. Also prescribe its allocation as per Ind AS 36. What is the answer? What is the answer? What is the cost of this cash generating unit? What is the cost? 200 crore is goodwill. 1000 crore is the asset cost of this plant and machinery. So the total carrying value, the total cost is 1200 crores. If 1000 crore is the cost of the plant, what is the depreciation? Depreciation क्या होगा? 1000 divided by 10, 100 crores. So what is the carrying value? Goodwill 200, other assets 900. The total carrying value is 1100. What is the recoverable value of this plant? Recoverable value कितनी है? 600 crore is the recoverable value. So what is the impairment loss? What is the impairment loss on this CGU? 1100 crore is the carrying value of CGU. 600 crore is the recoverable value. What is impairment loss?
500 crore.
500 crores is the impairment loss. How this 500 crore will be allocated? First to the goodwill, then to the other assets. But other assets में एक ही asset है, मतलब पूरा 300 इस other asset में चला जाएगा. So impairment loss will be charged 200 to goodwill and 300 to other assets, total 500. So goodwill will become 0. The other identifiable asset 900 minus 300, 600. So cost minus accumulated depreciation minus accumulated impairment loss, 600. So this carrying value after impairment loss is 600, and the revised carrying value after impairment loss for this cash generating unit is 600, right? Any doubt in this question? I am taking a 30 seconds pause. If you have any question so far, I would be happy to answer that. Let me know if you have any question so far. Please let me know. Any question? Khushi is asking, sir, in business, internally generated goodwill is not recorded. Yes, it is not allowed. So all these goodwill are goodwill arising in business combination. These are purchased goodwill, not internally generated goodwill. Any question, Nisha? Any question, Monica, Anila, Vignesh, Karthik? Any question? No? Okay. So, okay, if you don't have any question, then I'll move to the corporate asset concept. It's 8:26 now. Let's have a 10 minutes break and we will start at 8:36. Okay. Let's have a 10 minutes break. Ashok ji, break start. after cash generating unit, so there is a concept of corporate assets. What is meant by corporate assets? Have you understand profit center, cost center, right? For example, we all chartered accountants works for a finance department. This finance department is known as a cost center, right? Back office. But sales staff, the sales department does not considered as a cost center. They are considered as a profit center because they are selling the goods and they are getting the money. Okay. Likewise, the factory buildings, these are considered as a profit center because they are manufacturing the goods and they are like profit center. But the corporate assets, which are the corporate building, the corporate assets, right? The corporate office, which is used for the purpose of administrative purposes. In the corporate office, the decisions are being taken, the MIS are being prepared, right? The compliances are being made, the books of accounts are getting maintained, the audit is happening. So this corporate building and factory building, if I'll say corporate building is like a cost center and factory building is like a profit center, means factory building is generating cash flows, but whether corporate building is generating cash flows, आप कॉर्पोरेट बिल्डिंग का वैल्यू इन यूज निकाल पाओगे?
No.
Because this is not generating any cash flow, right? The factory building is generating because it helps in production, right? But you cannot compute the recoverable value, or you cannot compute the value in use for the corporate building, right? While you can compute fair value less cost to sell, but you cannot compute fair value in use for that corporate assets. So corporate assets are assets other than goodwill that contribute to the future cash flows of both the cash generating unit under review and other cash generating units, right? CGU under review and other CGU. Friend, just give me a minute. Just give me a minute. Yeah. Yes. So corporate assets are assets other than goodwill that contribute to the future cash flows of both the CGU under review and other CGU. But this corporate asset, like corporate building, while it is a cost center, while it does not have its own recoverable value in terms of value in use, but whether corporate assets is important or not, क्या corporate asset important है या नहीं है? Yes, it is important, because if corporate assets will not be there, who will tell you how much sales has been happened, how much compliances are there? If there is a non-compliances, how the company will run the business, right? So friends, since the corporate assets does not generate cash inflow independently of the other asset, the recoverable amount of individual corporate asset cannot be determined. Therefore, the recoverable amount is determined for the cash generating unit to which the corporate asset belongs and is compared with the carrying amount of this cash generating unit. So like I have told you, if an individual asset does not have a recoverable value, in that case, it has to be grouped with the other group of asset which can have a recoverable value. Likewise, this corporate asset has to be grouped with the other group of assets, the other cash generating unit which has a recoverable value, right? So corporate asset को भी हम क्या करेंगे, पहले group कर देंगे, it will become part of a CGU. Then we will compute the impairment loss on CGU. Then we will allocate the impairment loss on that CGU which is having a corporate asset, right? Let's understand this concept with the help of an example. To cut a long story short, if there is a corporate asset, the corporate asset does not generate cash flow and hence recoverable value cannot be determined, and hence to check the impairment loss on corporate asset, it has to be clubbed with the CGU, the other CGU to which it belongs, okay? And then we need to compute the recoverable value of the cash generating unit, impairment loss on the cash generating unit, and allocate the allocate the impairment loss on corporate assets and the other assets of that cash generating unit. Okay. So let's understand this concept with the help of this example. Illustration number 8, ICAI study material. Earth Infra Limited has two cash generating unit A and B. There is no goodwill within the units carrying values. So there are two cash generating unit A and B, and there is no goodwill within the units carrying values. The carrying value of the CGU or CGU A 20 million, CGU B 30 million. Carrying value CGU A 20, CGU B 30. Okay. So carrying value of CGU is given 20, 30. The company has an office building which it is using as an office headquarter and has not been included in the above values and can be allocated to the units on the basis of their carrying values. There are two CGU carrying values are given, no goodwill, and there is one head office building whose value is 10 million. This 10 million needs to be allocated in the proportion to the carrying value of CGU and CGUB. मतलब 10 को किस रेशियो में बांटना है, 20:30 के रेशियो में बांटना है. Okay. The recoverable amount are based on value in use of 18 million for CGU A and 38 million for CGU B. So recoverable values are also given. Determine whether the carrying values of CGU A and B are impaired, right? You need to determine whether the carrying values of CGU A and CGU B are impaired. Okay. So this is a question on allocation of corporate assets. So let me explain you with the help of the Excel file. Let's talk about the concept first. What is the concept? The concept is allocation of corporate asset on CGU and allocation of impairment loss. This is the concept we are discussing. Okay. I hope Excel file is there. Are you able to see the Excel file? Yes, friends. So friends, we will be discussing illustration number 8 of ICAI study material, which is allocation of corporate asset and impairment. Okay. Illustration number 8. ICAI study material. I'll give you some steps. Okay. I'll give you some steps and then we'll discuss. Step number 1, allocate corporate asset in the ratio of CGU. Like in this example, in this question, the corporate asset value is 10 million and the carrying value of 2 CGU to this corporate asset belongs. So in the business, there are 2 cash generating unit, A and B. And in this business, there is a head office building, which is 10 million building. So this 10 million building head office is supporting to both the unit A and B. So yes, Ginny, you are right. This 10 million has to be allocated in the ratio of CGU, 20:30. So 4 and 6 is need to be allocated. Step number 1, allocate corporate asset in the ratio of CGU. Step number 2, calculate carrying value of CGU after including corporate asset value. So if the carrying value is 20 and 30 and corporate asset allocation is 4 and 6, what is my carrying value of CGU after corporate asset allocation? After including corporate asset value? So calculate carrying value of CGU after including corporate asset value. कॉर्पोरेट एसेट की वैल्यू इंक्लूड करने के बाद सीजीयू की वैल्यू क्या होगी, कैरिंग वैल्यू क्या होगी, 24 and 36. वेरी गुड. स्टेप नंबर 3, कंपेयर द टोटल कैरिंग वैल्यू विथ रिकवरेबल वैल्यू. अब हमें क्या करना है, जो स्टेप नंबर 2 की टोटल कैरिंग वैल्यू है उसको रिकवरेबल वैल्यू के साथ कंपेयर करना है. व्हाट इज द रिकवरेबल वैल्यू गिवन इन द क्वेश्चन? In the question, the recoverable value is given 18 and 38. 18 and 38, the recoverable value is given. So after comparison, you need to compute the impairment loss, if any. Calculate impairment loss, if any. If there is an impairment loss, allocate impairment loss in CGU and corporate asset in the ratio of their carrying value. आपको क्या करना है, उस impairment loss को allocate करना है CGU में और corporate asset में. किस रेशियो में? उसकी carrying value के रेशियो. Now let's solve this question. Let's solve this question. Okay. So what is given in the question? Solution. Corporate asset is given. Corporate asset 10 million. 10 million. Carrying value of CGU A and CGU B is given. Carrying value. CGU A, CGU B. Both are given. How much is the carrying value? 20 million, 30 million. 20, 30 million. Million. Then recoverable value is also given. CGU and B, what is given? 18 and 38. This is the fact which is given, right? Now, I'll use all the steps and I will arrive at the answer. Okay. I will use the steps and arrive at the answer. Particulars, CGU A, CGU B, total. First of all, what is the carrying values are given? What is the carrying value which is given? Carrying value. The carrying value is given 20 million and 30 million. 20 and 30. The total is 20 plus 30. What is my step number 1? What is my step number 1? Allocate corporate asset. Allocate corporate asset in the ratio of the carrying values. Corporate asset allocation in the ratio of carrying value. What is the total of corporate asset? 10 million. The total of corporate asset is 10 million. So I need to allocate 10 million. This is 10 million. I need to allocate this 10 in the ratio of 10 multiplied by 20 divided by 50. Divide by 50. 10 multiplied by 30 divided by 50. Okay. What is my step number 2? Calculate carrying value. Calculate carrying value after including the corporate asset value. What is my step number 2? My step number 2. Carrying value after including carrying value of CGU after corporate asset. Carrying value of CGU after corporate asset. What is that? 24, 36, total 60. Total 60. Okay. Step number 3. Compare the total carrying value with recoverable value. What is the recoverable value given in this question? Step number 3. What is recoverable value?
1838.
18 and 38. Compare the total carrying value with recoverable value. Step number 2 and step number 3. Step number 4. Compute if there is any impairment loss. Step number 4. Compute impairment loss if any. Impairment loss. Is there any impairment loss on CGU A? Yes. On CGU A, the impairment loss is 6 million. And for CGU B, no impairment. Why? Because recoverable value is more than the carrying value. No impairment. Any difficulty, any problem so far? Any problem so far? Any difficulty here? अब हमें पता लग गया कि CGU A needs to be impaired by 6 million and there is no impairment on CGU B. Now I need to allocate the impairment loss in CGU and corporate asset. Step number 5. What is my step number 5? I need to allocate impairment loss in CGU and corporate asset. Allocation of impairment loss. Allocation of impairment loss. Impairment loss. In what? In what? Allocation of impairment loss in CGU A. CGU B में तो होगा ही नहीं ना. CGU A. CGU A. Excluding corporate asset. And corporate asset. And corporate asset. इन दोनों पे आपको impairment loss allocate करना है. How can I allocate the impairment loss of 6 million in the ratio of carrying value of CGU excluding corporate asset and only corporate asset? किस रेशियो में करूंगा? किस रेशियो में? In the ratio of CGU excluding, in the ratio of carrying value of CGU excluding corporate asset and corporate asset. Okay. So friends, किस ratio में? What is my carrying value of CGU excluding corporate asset? 20 million. What is my value of corporate asset? 4 million, right? So what is my carrying value? मेरी carrying value क्या है? What is my carrying value? My carrying value is 20 and 4. 20 and 4. So what is my impairment loss? What is my impairment loss? My impairment loss of 6 million needs to be allocated. 6 multiplied by 20 divide by 24. 6 multiplied by 4 divide by 24. 1 million. This is my impairment loss. This is my impairment loss. What is my revised carrying value? What is my revised carrying value? My revised carrying values. अब मेरी रिवाइज कैरिंग वैल्यू क्या होगी इन तीनों एसेट की? सीजीयू ए, सीजीयू बी एंड कॉर्पोरेट एसेट. Corporate asset. What is my revised carrying value? What was my earlier carrying value? 20, 30, 10. What is my impairment? सीजीयू ए पे कितना इंपेयर किया? -5. सीजीयू बी पे 0. कॉर्पोरेट एसेट पे -1. What is my revised carrying value? My revised carrying value 20 minus 5, 30 plus 30 minus 0, 10 minus 1. This will be my revised carrying value. This is how you need to solve this question. This is how you need to solve this question.
So, sir, 18 is the value given in the question recoverable amount for CQA. Then we have to allocate further 3 into corporate asset. No?
We have to allocate further
3 millions into the corporate assets.
See what happens. This corporate asset is a part of kind of a CGU, right? This corporate asset does not have its own value, right? So
Right.
standard says that whenever it is a corporate asset, right? Whatever you are comparing with the situation when I told you, if an individual asset has its own recoverable value, right? तो आपको उससे ज्यादा impairment loss allocate नहीं करना, right? That's what you are connecting with.
Yes, sir.
Correct? But
Because
in
A
this,
की value दे रखी है 18 individually 18, right?
बट इस केस में ना उस इंडिविजुअल एसेट की नहीं दे रखी. इस केस में जो एसेट फेयर वैल्यू दे रखी है, रिकवरेबल वैल्यू, वो पूरे सीजीयू की दे रखी है, राइट? सो वो जो
Right.
सीजीयू है, दिस कॉर्पोरेट एसेट विल आल्सो बिकम पार्ट ऑफ दैट सीजीयू. करेक्ट? जो
Right.
मैंने आपको सिचुएशन बताई है वो एक इंडिविजुअल एसेट की बताई है, बिकॉज दैट इंडिविजुअल एसेट कैन जनरेट द कैश फ्लो इंडिपेंडेंटली. करेक्ट? सो जो मैंने बताया आपको वो इंडिविजुअल एसेट का बताया. बट if there is a CGU where the recoverable value of CGU is given and the corporate asset is also given, so you will assume that कि ये जो corporate asset है वो CGU का part है, right? And after that you will calculate the revised carrying value and accordingly you will charge the impairment loss. This will not hold good for CGU. This will hold good for individual asset recoverable value. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Yeah. This is what the guidance is given in the standard, right? क्योंकि सीजीयू भी तो आपने बनाया है ना. दैट सीजीयू में इंक्लूड सम एसेट्स व्हिच मे हैव अ रिकवरेबल वैल्यू, व्हिच मे नॉट हैव अ रिकवरेबल वैल्यू, राइट? सीजीयू कंसिस्ट ऑफ इवन गुडविल, राइट? तो बहुत इवन गुडविल इज नॉट अ सेपरेबल एसेट. करेक्ट? मोनिका, इन इंडेस 38 आई टोल्ड यू दैट गुडविल डज नॉट मीट द क्राइटेरिया ऑफ सेपरेबिलिटी. तभी तो इंटरनली जनरेटेड गुडविल को हम कैपिटलाइज नहीं करते, परचेज गुडविल को कैपिटलाइज करते हैं, राइट?
Yes, sir.
So CGU may have a multiple asset which may generate cash flow, which may not generate cash flow. Okay, so you cannot say that कि CGU पे उतना ही allocate करूंगी और बाकी तो मैं corporate asset पे करूंगी, फिर तो allocation का मतलब ही खत्म हो गया. Correct?
Yes, sir. Right. Correct.
But friends, have you understood, with the help of this question, have you understood how to compute the impairment loss on corporate asset? First, you need to allocate the corporate asset to which you need to allocate the corporate asset to the cash generating unit to which this corporate asset belongs. Number 1. Number 2, then you compute the revised carrying value. Number 3, you need to see the recoverable value. Number 4, you need to compute the impairment loss on that CGU after corporate asset. Then if there is any impairment loss, you need to allocate that impairment loss to the CGU excluding corporate asset and corporate asset. Okay. Fine. Okay. Very good. So friends, we discussed this illustration number 8 also. This is what it is there. So this I'm not taking. This you can do in your as your homework. Friends, now I am moving to the next concept, reversal of impairment loss. What is the reversal of impairment loss concept? Tell me. Anyone who can give me any guidance on reversal of impairment loss? Anyone who can talk anything about reversal of impairment loss?
When there is, sorry, carry on.
Yeah. So reversal of impairment loss. You have booked an impairment loss on an asset, right? And subsequently, the assets fair value has increased, the assets recoverable value has increased. Okay. So you have booked an impairment loss. Why? Because, due to the external factors, you have seen there is an indicator of impairment and the value has gone down. But now the indicator has been reversed. Now the demand of this product has gone up, right? The prices of this product has gone up. The market capitalization of the asset has gone up. The market capitalization of the company has gone up. So there is a favorable indicators. There are favorable indicators. The value has gone up. So in that case, what you are required to do, you have to reverse the impairment loss which you have booked earlier, correct? Which you have booked earlier on revaluation. Okay. Friends, the standard says that you can reverse your impairment loss, not only in case of revaluation model, rather in cost model as well. If subsequently your recoverable value has increased, you can reverse your impairment loss. But the question is how much impairment loss you can reverse. How much impairment loss you can reverse, right? So reversal of impairment loss. Impairment loss recognized in the prior period should be reversed if there is indication that such losses does not exist any long, right? What are the indicators? External indicator, internal indicator. We have discussed the external indicator was market value has significantly declined in case of impairment. But now it says that market value has increased significantly. It is just a replica, right? So it is just a reverse image. The indicator of impairment was market value has decreased significantly. The favorable external indicator is market value has increased significantly. Significant favorable changes in the technological market, economic or legal environment. Interest rate has been decreased. The unfavorable indicator was interest rate has been increased. It is decreased, right? Just reverse. What could be the internal indicator? Internal indicator of impairment was significant adverse effect in the use of the asset. The favorable internal indicator is significant favorable effect. Economic performance of the asset is better than expected. So friends, if there are favorable indicator, external or internal, which indicate that the impairment loss does not exist any long, so the company can reverse the impairment loss. The company can reverse. Now there are two questions: whether impairment loss can be reversed on all the assets, and what is the quantum by which the impairment loss can be reversed. Standard says that, first of all, impairment loss is not allowed to be reversed on goodwill. Impairment loss is not allowed to be reversed on goodwill. Impairment loss recognized for goodwill should not be reversed in a subsequent period. Why? Because if you will reverse the impairment loss on goodwill, it will be considered as a capitalization of internally generated goodwill. It will be considered as a capitalization of internally generated goodwill. Okay, understood. Sir, what would be the quantum of reversal of impairment loss? Is it exactly same? The amount which we have debited as an impairment loss, can we reverse the entire amount as an impairment loss? Answer is no. Standard says that you need to compare whatever is your recoverable value and whatever is your carrying value had the asset never been impaired. That would be your reversal of impairment loss. So let me explain this concept with the help of an example, right? Then we will discuss the theory. Let me explain this concept with the help of an example. Concept we are discussing, friends, the concept which we are discussing is reversal of impairment loss. What is the concept we are discussing? Reversal of impairment loss. reversal of impairment impairment loss on goodwill shall never be reversed. Okay. Impairment loss on other assets can be reversed. On other assets can be reversed if there is favorable indicator and recoverable value exceeds the carrying value. Okay. So these are two important concepts. Now, how much amount of impairment loss can be reversed? How much amount of impairment loss can be reversed? Let me explain this with the help of this example, with the help of one example. Let's say there is an asset. Let's say there is an asset. Example is there is an asset year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The value of the asset, the cost of asset is 1,20,000. Is 1,20,000. The life is 4 years. The life is 5 years. There is a cost of asset of 1,20,000. So this will be the cost of the asset, 1,20,000. Now, if life is 5 year, what is the depreciation? What is the depreciation? If life is 5 year, what is the depreciation? Depreciation. Carrying
24,000.
value. So 1,20,000 divided by 5, 24,000. What is the carrying value at the end of the first year? This one. Again 24,000. What is the carrying value at the end of the second year? This one. So this is gross block depreciation carrying value. Okay. Now, for example, there is an impairment. There is an impairment which happened at the end of second year, and the recoverable value which comes out was how much? 42,000. 42,000. So how much is the impairment loss? How much is the impairment loss? 42 minus 72. 30,000 is the impairment loss. 30,000 is the impairment loss. Okay. This is what it is. Now, what is the depreciation in the third year? What is the depreciation in the third year? In the third year,
14,000.
revised carrying value is 42,000 divided by remaining life 3 years. Very good, Abrikesh. 14,000. Your revised carrying value at the end of third year is this much. Okay. Again, 58 divided by, sorry, I think there is some problem. Sorry. This is my revised carrying value. No? Now, this will become the carrying value.
28,000.
So 28,000. Then 28 divided by 2, 14,000. 28 minus 14. And in the next year, 14 divided by 1. So this minus this, 0. Okay. So this is how it is there. Correct. So let me put another column of revised carrying value. So here the revised carrying value will become how much? 42,000. Okay. And this will be 40. So this will be 42 minus 14. Divided by 2. Divided by 1. Okay, fine. So friends, assuming, so we all are okay with this example. Just what we have done, we put some impairment, we put the revised depreciation. Now I need to discuss that how much impairment loss can be reversed if their recoverable value being more than carrying value. In the same example, let me take the same example. In the same example, what happened? What happened? At the end of fourth year, assuming at the end of, not fourth year, let's assume at the end of third year. At the end of third year, the recoverable value is 50,000. The recoverable value is 50,000. At the end of third year, the recoverable value becomes 50,000. What is my revised carrying value in this case? What is my revised carrying value? At the end of third year, it is 28,000. But at the end of third year, the recoverable value becomes 50,000. Suggest what will be the, suggest how much impairment loss can be reversed, and what is the revised carrying value at the end of third year. Is the question clear? Question सबको clear है? Whether question is clear to everyone? Whether question is clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. My question is, 30,000 impairment loss was charged in the second year. When we come to the end of the third year, we found that the recoverable value is 50,000 and my carrying value is 28,000. So it is beyond 22,000. It is 28 plus 22, 50,000. So it is more by 22,000. My question is how much impairment loss will be reversed? We have booked an impairment loss of 30,000. My question is that.
20,000 because reversal amount is only 22,000. 22,000, sorry.
Friends, standard says that whenever you will reverse your impairment loss, whenever you have to reverse your impairment loss, the reversal, after the reversal of an impairment loss, the revised carrying value should be lower of recoverable value, and had the asset never been impaired, then what would be the carrying value? Standard says that. What is the guidance given in the standard? Ind AS 36 provides that after reversal of an impairment loss, the revised carrying value should be what? The revised carrying value should be lower of what? Kiska lower? Lower of recoverable value, number one, and had the asset never been impaired, अगर asset कभी जिंदगी में impair होता ही नहीं, had the asset never been impaired, then what would be the carrying value? What would be the carrying value? Recoverable value कितनी है इस question में? At the end of third year, what is the recoverable value? At the end of third year, what is recoverable value?
50,000.
50,000. But what is the carrying value had the asset never been impaired? Carrying value क्या होती?
48,000.
48,000.
निकाल लेते हैं carrying value क्या होगी? Had the asset never been impaired, what is the carrying value? Very simple. Year cost depreciation. So let me put the depreciation chart here. Sorry. So this right? So this divide by 4, this divide by 3, right? What is my carrying value? My carrying value is 48,000, right? Carrying value at the end of third year is 48,000. Any doubt in this part? Any confusion, any problem? मैंने क्या किया? Carrying value निकाल दी. Simple. Had the asset never been impaired, what is the revised what is the carrying value? What would be the carrying value? Any doubt up to this stage? Any confusion up to this stage? Very good. Now we have the recoverable value. We have the carrying value had the asset never been impaired. What is lower? 48 or 50? What is lower?
48.
48, sir.
48. So friends, what is my existing value? Friends, what is my existing value? Existing value at the end of third year. At the end of third year.
28.
Existing value at the end of third year is 28. It is 28,000, correct? 28,000 is the existing value at the end of the third year. क्लियर है ना? ये मैंने अभी बताया था ना 28,000. मैंने इस क्वेश्चन में क्या किया? पहले सेकंड ईयर में इंपेयरमेंट चार्ज किया 30,000 का, फिर मैंने उसकी कैरिंग वैल्यू निकाली, फिर मैंने बताया थर्ड ईयर में रिकवरेबल वैल्यू 50,000 हो गई है, करेक्ट? अब द क्वेश्चन इज मैं क्या करूं? 28 की वैल्यू है और 30 का इंपेयरमेंट लॉस है, तो मैं क्या करूं? पूरा 30 रिवर्स कर दूं, तब तो वैल्यू 58 बन जाएगी. रिकवरेबल वैल्यू तो 50 है, तो क्या करूं? पूरा 22 कर दूं? स्टैंडर्ड सेज नो. स्टैंडर्ड कहता है यू नीड टू कंपेयर योर रिकवरेबल वैल्यू एंड व्हाट वुड हैव बीन योर रिवाइज्ड कैरिंग वैल्यू इफ दिस एसेट वुड हैव नेवर बीन इंपेयर्ड. अगर इंपेयरमेंट नहीं होता, डेप्रिसिएशन तो होता, तो वैल्यू क्या बनेगी? So it comes out at 48. So your revised carrying value, which is lower of recoverable value and the carrying value had the asset never been impaired, it comes out at 48,000. So which you need to be taken? So the lower value need to be taken, which is 48,000. So what is my revised carrying value? 48,000. So how much is my reversal of impairment? बताओ क्या होगा reversal?
20,000.
My reversal of impairment loss is 20,000, right? You need to reverse 20,000. What is the accounting entry? Asset account debit. To what? अगर कॉस्ट मॉडल है तो टू P&L, टू इम्पेयरमेंट रिवर्सल क्रेडिट. ओके. और अगर कोई रिवैल्यूएशन सरप्लस एग्जिस्ट करता है तो क्या होगा? यू नीड टू to impairment reversal if it is a cost model. If it is a revaluation model तो क्या करेंगे? It will go to revaluation surplus. To revaluation surplus. Okay. अगर आपने P&L में कोई एडजस्टमेंट की है तो to that extent you will reverse your P&L. Over and above will go to the revaluation surplus. Correct? तो वो आपको चेक करना पड़ेगा अगर revaluation model है तो. Right? But in this case we are reversing on it only 20,000 and we have already debited 30,000 in the P&L. So everything goes to P&L. Is that right? Is that correct? Shall I make this example more complex? Assuming the company has opted for revaluation model. Advise. What is the revised carrying value? In the above question, assuming the company has opted for revaluation model, advise the revised carrying value.
50,000.
Since it is not only impairment reversal, since you have opted for revaluation model, what is your current recoverable value? 50,000. आपकी आज की मार्केट वैल्यू 50,000 है. So in that case, existing value at the end of third year is how much? 28,000. Revised carrying value. Your revised carrying value would be, जो ज्यादा होगा वही लेंगे ना. क्या लेंगे? 50,000. क्योंकि कंपनी ने रिवैल्यूएशन मॉडल ऑप्ट किया है. रिवर्सल ऑफ इंपेयरमेंट लॉस क्या होगा?
22,000.
22,000. इस 22,000 को कहां लेके जाएंगे? व्हाट इज द अकाउंटिंग एंट्री?
Same.
पूरा का पूरा सेम. इट विल गो टू द P&L, इम्पेयरमेंट रिवर्सल. व्हाई? यू रिमेंबर आपने कितना इम्पेयरमेंट रिवर्स किया था, कितना इम्पेयरमेंट बुक किया था? 30,000. आपने 30,000 का P&L में इम्पेयरमेंट बुक किया था ना. सो टू द एक्सटेंट ऑफ 30,000 तो आप P&L से सेट ऑफ करोगे ना. लेट मी मेक इट मोर कॉम्प्लेक्स. In the above question, assuming the company has opted for revaluation model and the recoverable value is 60,000. The recoverable value is 60,000. Advise, what is the revised carrying value?
Revised carry value is 60,000, and to the extent of 30,000 reversal from impairment reversal, and 2,000 from revaluation surplus.
Very good. Existing value at the end of third year is 28,000. Revised carrying value आपका recoverable value 60,000 है ना. ये what would have been the carrying value वो तो आपको impairment reversal के लिए देखना है अगर cost model हो तो, right? बट अगर मेरी रिकवरेबल वैल्यू ज्यादा है और मैं रिवैल्यूएशन मॉडल ऑप्ट कर रहा है मैंने, तब तो मेरा जो हायर वैल्यू में वही लूंगा. हायर वैल्यू मीन्स मार्केट वैल्यू. 60,000. रिवाइज कैरिंग वैल्यू इज 60,000. हाउ मच इम्पेयरमेंट लॉस विल बी रिवर्स्ड?
30,000.
इम्पेयरमेंट लॉस कितना रिवर्स करोगे? इज दैट
30,000.
30,000. Impairment loss reversal will be 30,000. It will not be 32,000. It will be 30,000 only. To the extent impairment actually recorded in the second year. तो अब रिमेनिंग 2,000 का क्या होगा? अकाउंटिंग एंट्री. एसेट अकाउंट डेबिट. एसेट तो पूरा डेबिट 60 माइनस 28 से ही होगा. इम्पेयरमेंट रिवर्सल कितने अमाउंट से होगा? 30,000 से होगा. क्रेडिट.
To revaluation surplus.
Revaluation surplus, OCI. Credit. माय डियर स्टूडेंट्स, अगर आप ये सारे कॉन्सेप्ट्स को समझ पा रहे हो और कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं इन कॉन्सेप्ट में, these are very simple straightforward concept. The only thing is, instead of only using your mind, you have to use your heart also, right? This is what the standard talks about. Reversal of impairment loss. Reversal of impairment loss. Your impairment loss will always be reversed to the extent of what? Lower of your recoverable value and what would have been the carrying value had this asset never been impaired. उसमें से जो भी लोअर होगा वो रिवाइज कैरिंग वैल्यू होगी. सो रिवाइज कैरिंग वैल्यू को एग्जिस्टिंग कैरिंग वैल्यू से कंपेयर करोगे तो आपको इंपेयरमेंट लॉस का रिवर्सल मिल जाएगा. इंपेयरमेंट लॉस का जो भी रिवर्सल मिलेगा आप उसको कहां लेके जाओगे? P&L में लेके जाओगे. टू द एक्सटेंट यू हैव बुक्ड योर इंपेयरमेंट लॉस अर्लियर, राइट? अगर आपका इंपेयरमेंट लॉस का रिवर्सल उससे ज्यादा है जो आपने पहले बुक किया था, कब हो सकता है ज्यादा? व्हेन यू आर ऑप्टिंग फॉर रिवैल्यूएशन मॉडल, राइट? In that case, whatever you have booked earlier in the P&L, you have to reverse back into the P&L. Over and above, you will take it to the revaluation surplus, OCI. My dear friends, I hope this part is clear to all of you. I hope this part is clear to all of you. Tell me, is that clear or it is not clear? So let me discuss illustration number 10 on this. This was the last concept of this standard. Let me discuss illustration number 10. On 1st April 2001, Venus Limited acquired 100% of Saturn Limited for rupees 4 lakh. So this is the acquisition of business concept. Venus acquired 100% of Saturn for rupees 4 lakh. The fair value of the net identifiable asset of Saturn was 320 and goodwill was 80. So the fair value of the asset acquired was 320 and the consideration paid was 4 lakh. So what is the balance amount? It is goodwill, 80,000. Saturn is into coal mining business. On 31st March 2003, the government has cancelled the licenses given to it in few states. Indicator of impairment. Government has cancelled the license. There is a adverse economic environment, legal environment. As a result, Saturn revenue is estimated to get reduced by 30%. The adverse change in the marketplace and the regulatory condition is an indicator of impairment. As a result, Venus has to estimate the recoverable amount of goodwill and the net assets of Saturn Limited as on 31st March 2003. Venus Limited uses straight line of depreciation. The useful life of Saturn Limited asset is estimated to be 20 years with no residual value. So in this question so far, we got 3 information. These assets were acquired on 1st April 2001. There were 2 kind of asset. One is identifiable asset 3,20,000, goodwill 80,000. This situation is talking about 31st March 2003. It means after 2 years, 31st March 2002, 31st March 2003. And the life of the asset is given 20 years with no residual value. 320 divided by 20. How much is the depreciation for 2 years?
32,000.
32,000. 320 divided by 20 multiplied by 2, 32,000. So what is the carrying value of the identifiable assets as on 31st March 2003?
2,88,000.
320 minus 32, 2,88,000, correct? Okay. So what is the carrying value of goodwill as on 31st March 2003?
80,000.
80,000, 80,000. What is the total carrying value of this cash generating unit?
3,68,000.
3,68,000. 3,68,000. Okay. Understood. You know, this is what we have solved till so far. Till now, we have solved this question, right? Till now, whatever information is given, हमने क्या किया अपने mind में ही solve कर लिया. No independent cash inflows can be identified to any individual assets. Okay. So the entire operation of Saturn is to be treated as cash generating unit. Due to the regulatory entangle, it is not possible to determine the selling price of Saturn Limited as a CGU. Its value in use is estimated by the management at rupees 2,12,000. Recoverable value दी है 2,12,000. What was the carrying value of CGU? 2,88,000. What is the value in use? 2,12,000.
So carrying value of total CGU is 3,68,000, sir.
Sorry, 3,68,000. My bad. 3,68,000 is the carrying value, 368. And what is the value in use? What is the recoverable value?
2,12,000.
So what is the impairment loss?
1,56,000.
1,56,000 is the impairment loss. अब ये 1,56,000 को allocate कैसे करेंगे CGU में?
First to the goodwill 80,000 and remainder to the other assets.
Very good. First to the goodwill. Entire goodwill will be struck off. Entire goodwill will be wiped out. 80 and 76 to the other asset. Now, what is the revised carrying value of goodwill? 0. What is the revised carrying value of other identifiable asset? How much? It will be. अब revised carrying value क्या होगी? 288 minus 76 होगी ना?
2,12,000.
2,12,000. As simple as that. मतलब जो 2,12,000 है वो पूरी की पूरी other assets की value है as on 31st March 2003. Very good. Suppose by 31st March 2005 the government reinstate the license. अब government ने क्या किया? लाइसेंस वापस दे दिया। द मैनेजमेंट एक्सपेक्ट अ फेवरेबल चेंज इन नेट कैश फ्लोज। दिस इज एन इंडिकेटर that an impairment loss may have reversed. The recoverable amount of certain limited net asset is re-estimated. The value in use is expected to be rupees 3,04,000 and fair value less cost of disposal is expected to be rupees 2,90,000. So what is my recoverable value? Value in use is 3,04,000 and fair value less cost to sell is 290. What is my recoverable value?
3,04,000.
3,04,000 higher of fair value less cost to sell and value in use. So recoverable value is given in this question. This question talks about reversal of impairment loss. This situation arises after 2 years. After 2 years means हमने 31st March 2003 को impairment किया था, 31st March 2005 को reversal करना। Recoverable value is given 3,04,000. जो carrying value थी 31st March 2004 को वो कितनी थी? 31st March 2003 को 2,12,000 की थी। अब मुझे 31st March 2005 पे recoverable value पता है, मुझे और क्या निकालना है? How much impairment loss can be reversed?
Carrying amount before such impairment loss has to be computed first.
Yes, you need to compute the carrying value. Had this asset never been impaired, अगर वो 1,56,000 का impairment नहीं आया होता, had this asset never been impaired, what would have been the carrying value of this asset, not goodwill. Goodwill का आप reversal नहीं करते impairment loss. So आपने कितना impairment loss debit किया था इस asset में? 76,000. Right? 76,000 किया था ना? So compute the revised carrying value had this asset never been impaired. बताओ क्या होगा? 31st March 2005 पे कितना होगा carrying value?
3,20,000 less depreciation for 4 years, that is
Very good.
64,000.
Very good. Who's there? Sorry, I'm not able to see the name.
It's Pooja, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Pooja, and very well explained. 3,20,000 original cost minus depreciation equivalent to 4 years. 320 minus 320 divided by 20 multiplied by 4. तो कितना होगा? 320 minus 64,000. आपको कैसे निकालोगे? 320 minus 64,000, 4 साल का depreciation. So carrying amount had no impairment losses recognized on 31st March 2005. ये आपका कैरिंग अमाउंट निकल कर आया अगर कभी इंपेयरमेंट लॉस रिकॉग्नाइज नहीं होता तो। रिकवरेबल अमाउंट कितना है? रिकवरेबल अमाउंट इज 3,04,000. रिकवरेबल अमाउंट इज 3,04,000. कैरिंग अमाउंट इज 256. व्हाट इज लोअर? व्हाट इज लोअर? 256 इज लोअर. 256 ही लोअर होगा ना? और
Yes.
आज की डेट में
Yes, sir.
So we are clear. My revised carrying value as on 31st March 2005 will be 2,56,000. पर मैं impairment loss कितना रिवर्स करूं? What is my existing carrying value? मेरी existing carrying value कितनी है? 2,12,000. 2,12,000 was my carrying value as on 31st March 2003. तो इस 2,12,000 पे आप 2 साल का depreciation और लगा दो। ये समझ में आया नहीं आया? मुझे तो एग्जिस्टिंग कैरिंग वैल्यू निकालनी पड़ेगी ना?
Yes.
2,12,000 is the revised carrying value after impairment on 31st March 2003. So what is my existing carrying value as on 31st March 2005? 2,12,000 divided by 18 multiplied by 2, 24,000. So my existing carrying value as on 31st March 2005 is 1,88,000. What is my revised carrying value? 2,56,000. What is my reversal of impairment loss? 256 minus 188. What is the number? 56 plus 12, 68,000. 68,000. 68,000 is my impairment reversal. 68,000. Okay. The impairment loss recognized previously can be reversed only to the extent of lower of re-estimated recoverable value, right? Which is 2,56,000, higher of fair value less cost of disposal 290 and value in use 3,04,000, right? So वो कितना आया? यहाँ पर ये explanation गलत लिखी हुई है. Lower of recoverable value and and carrying value had the asset never been impaired, which is 2,56,000. Impairment loss reversal will be 68,000, 256 minus 188. This amount is recognized as income in the statement of P&L for the year ended 31st March 2005. The carrying amount of other asset as on 31st March 2005 after impairment or loss reversal will be 2,56,000. From 1st April 2005, the depreciation charge will be 256 divided by 16,000. This is what it is there in case of reversal of impairment loss. Let me know if you have any question. Let me know if you have any question on this part. अगर किसी को कुछ भी नहीं समझ में आया, please let me know. Any question? Yes, Abhikesh, please.
Sir, in case of calculating the carrying value, had there not been any impairment loss, we should ignore, we should not consider what has been reversed in the goodwill, whatever impairment loss, like in the given case, 80 lakhs have been reversed against goodwill.
Yes, you are not
80,000,
required to consider that. Yes, because
So
standard
balance
says
only-
that. Sorry.
No, please carry on.
Standard says that reversal of impairment goodwill is prohibited. Okay, why? Because when you reverse the impairment loss on goodwill, when you will reinstate the goodwill, it will be tantamount as a internally generated goodwill capitalization, which is
Yes.
not allowed under Ind AS 38 also. तो आपने जो भी impairment loss goodwill पे charge किया है, you are not required to reconsider that impairment loss.
Okay, so balance only we should consider for
Yes.
calculating the
Yes,
original carrying value.
absolutely yes. Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Any other question? Any other question, my dear friends? Very good. Disclosures I'm not covering, so disclosure is not relevant, but it is there in your slide. It will not ask in exam. So friends, talking about the difference between AS and Ind AS, AS 28 and Ind AS 36. So financial asset and biological asset, AS 28 does not apply to financial asset. AS 28 does not specifically exclude biological asset, but Ind AS 36 applies to financial asset and biological asset as well. But sorry, Ind AS 36 also specifically exclude biological asset. So just few small part. Goodwill, if goodwill is impaired in accounting standard, it can be reversed in accounting standard also. But in Ind AS 36, once goodwill is impaired, it cannot be reversed. Okay. So annual impairment testing for intangible asset, which is not yet available for use, or intangible asset having indefinite life and goodwill. So AS 28 says that goodwill and other intangible asset are tested for impairment only when there is an indication of impairment. But Ind AS 36 says that nothing doing if these are the three assets, so on which you are not required to check even impairment indicator. You have to do the mandatory impairment testing, right? So this is what which is given as a difference. Friends, talking about the lesson summary. So let's have a Maggie time. In the next 2 minutes, let's revise the entire standard. Friends, we discussed the objective and scope of Ind AS 36, and we discussed that the objective of this standard is to ensure that the asset should not be carried at more than their recoverable value. The scope is Ind AS 36 applies to all the asset except if an impairment is specifically covered under a specific standard like Ind AS 2 inventory, like Ind AS 109 financial assets. In that case, the impairment on that asset has to be taken care by that particular standard, otherwise Ind AS 36. Standard says that you need to identify if that asset may be impaired, right? The only exception is intangible asset not yet available for use, intangible asset having indefinite life, and goodwill arising in business combination. For these three assets, you are not required to check whether indicator are there or not. You have to estimate the recoverable amount. But in all other cases, you have to see if the impairment indicator exists. If it exists, you have to estimate the recoverable amount. You have to measure the recoverable amount, which is fair value less cost to sell, and value in use higher, which is higher of fair value less cost to sell and value in use. You need to recognize and measure impairment loss. What is my impairment loss? It is equal to your recoverable value minus carrying value is equal to impairment loss. You need to recognize impairment loss in the P&L until and unless there is a revaluation surplus, then you need to adjust your revaluation surplus. Okay. The concept of CGU, if it is not possible to determine the recoverable value of individual asset, then you need to go to CGU level. Okay. What is CGU? It's the smallest identifiable group of assets which can generate independent cash flow. Right. If there is an impairment loss on CGU, in that case, first you need to allocate the entire impairment loss to the extent of goodwill available. Second, in case of remaining impairment loss, the remaining impairment loss has to be allocated pro rata on the carrying value of the other assets. The only thing is, if the other asset has a recoverable value, right? In that case, the impairment loss charged to the specific asset is only to the extent of the recoverable value of that individual asset, not beyond that, right? And the remaining impairment loss has to be allocated on the remaining asset on a pro rata basis. If there is a corporate asset, the corporate assets needs to be allocated to the CGU to which it belongs, right? Then you need to compute the revised carrying value. You need to compare the revised carrying value with the recoverable value. Then you need to compute the impairment loss. Then that impairment loss needs to be allocated, okay? In the ratio of CGU excluding corporate asset and corporate asset. Then the reversal of impairment loss, the impairment loss cannot be reversed on goodwill, but on the other assets, the impairment loss can be reversed only to the extent of revised carrying value, which is lower of recoverable value. And had the asset never been impaired, what would have been the carrying value, right? So friends, then the disclosure part, not relevant for you guys. And now it is a thank you slide. Thank you so much, students. I hope you have enjoyed thoroughly in the last two sessions, session 1 and session 2. Impairment of assets standard, right? I have covered with a lot of concepts in my Excel file. If you go through with the concepts in Excel file, I am damn sure that you will not make any mistake in the exam, because I have given you a lot of situations that what happens in those situations, right? Thank you so much, my dear friends. Can I conclude the session now? If you have any question, if you don't have any question, can I call out the session? Thank you so much, students. Bye-bye. Take care. Yes, session is over. Thank you.